Okay, I think we're ready now. First of all, I would like, on behalf of our group, what we call the National Platforms Task Force, to thank the Ministry of Education here, Jose and his team, very warmly for organizing this meeting. It's always a challenge to get people from different sectors together in a room, and I think you've done a very, very good job. So thank you very much for this, and I also want to say that I've been looking very, very much forward to coming here and to meet you and to have a dialogue with you. Just a few words about myself. As Jose said, I'm the director of Danish Science Factory. We're an independent non-profit organization in Denmark, an NGO, and our aim is simply to engage young people in science, and we run a number of different programs and projects in Denmark to this effect. And Kim, maybe you can say a few words about yourself.
Sure. So as Jose already gave you my background, I think I don't need to explain too much about myself, but maybe about ERT, which is the European Roundtable of Industrialists. It's a forum of about 50 CEOs and chairmen of some of Europe's largest companies. They work across border, and we are what we call the real economy. So we are companies that generally manufacture things. The jobs that we provide in services are what we consider to be high-quality services jobs. We're not the banking or finance sector. We're not consultants. We're companies that make stuff. And that's why nearly 10 years ago, our CEOs started talking to policymakers about the fact that we saw that there was not enough people graduating in STEM or choosing STEM careers, even if that means vocational training. And 10 years ago, to be perfectly honest, no one in the policy sector was very interested in talking to us. But since the crisis has come and since we have a problem with youth unemployment, all of a sudden people start to understand what we were trying to say 10 years ago. There's a mismatch between skills that students are graduating with and the jobs that are available for them. So this is why we focus a lot on the competitiveness of Europe, meaning also for us, education.
Thank you. Now, I also want to introduce the rest of our group. You will meet them later during the day. The ones on top, we have Nana Seidelin, who's the director of House of Natural Sciences, and we have Sebastian Smit, who's the project manager of the JetNet project in the Netherlands. And I also have from my office Hans sitting over there and taking notes. So, but apart from us being here, we also have a number of colleagues who are not here today. We have from the project Wissensfabrik in Germany. This is a collaboration of industry that has made this agency that produces kits for schools and so on. She's in our group, and from the Autonomous University in Barcelona, we have Anna and Raquel, who are doing a lot of investigations into and research into this area to support the group. From the UK Future Lab, Neil McLean, and from the Telefonica Foundation, Gert Payman. So this is the task force group, and we are all part of the Ingenious project. And the Ingenious project is a project run by the European Schoolnet, which is a collaboration of, I think, 30 ministers of education in Europe. And together with the European Roundtable, they run the Ingenious project that aims at promoting school industry contacts in Europe to find best practices, to find ways to build bridges between the world of schools and the world of companies that do stuff, as Kim says. And there's a lot of different activities going on within this project, and we are, you could say, a spin-off of that project, because what we found working with school industry collaborations, we found, looking at different countries, in particularly the Netherlands, that it made very, very much sense to have some sort of coordinating function, national coordinating function that could help build these bridges. And this is why we thought, okay, maybe it would be useful for us to collect some of these experience and try to travel around to member states and simply, as we do today, tell about what we do and what our experiences are so far. Not to not to say that you should do the same, because every country is different, every culture is different, but perhaps it could be valuable for you simply to know what's going on. So that's our method, and we hope that by doing this and getting the right people together in the room as we are today, we can help move things a little bit forward, because all over Europe we really want the same thing, to promote STEM education in each our way. I think that I have actually already covered some of this. I don't think I want to go very much into why STEM is important. I think we all probably agree that this is very, very much important for the future of our societies. And I already also touched a little bit upon why national platforms are important, but we will have much more concrete work about that. But I think you have the industry
point of
view about this. Maybe you could elaborate a little bit.
Yeah, so even if everybody in this room is already convinced about why STEM is important, one of the things that we have discovered is that not everybody believes or has the same understanding of the situation. So today in Europe, as I already mentioned, it's much easier to get people's attention when you talk about the gap in skills, job skills. The other thing that people need to understand is growth. Where do you have growth? Well, you have growth where there is investment. And where does investment go? Investment goes where there are raw material resources, whether it's things for manufacturing, whether it be energy resources, and it goes where there are knowledge resources. And that means well-skilled human resources. When we talk about STEM, it's not just because we need a few scientists or that we need a couple of people for industry. It's because as a society, we benefit the more that people have exposure to STEM in schools. And that, we believe, leads to a stronger society and a better world. So it's no longer just beliefs. About 2 weeks ago, the OECD announced the results of a study that they did on 22 countries looking at the skills of 16 to 65-year-olds. So you're probably all familiar with the PISA study, which you do with 15-year-olds. Well, this was the first time that we've been able to do a comparative study taking a look at literacy, numeracy, and the ability to work in what they call a technology-rich environment, mostly meaning ICT, and make some kind of comparison. And I highly recommend that you take a look at the document. I'm going to pull just a couple of the first slides. One, if you take a look at the numeracy. This shows a pretty good spread between the different countries. And sometimes there are surprises about which countries perform well and which countries perform less well. But what's also important to note is that within each country, there is a greater variation than there is between the countries. And in some countries, they are much better to manage this variation and keep this variation small compared to others. Japan and Finland are notable examples where you have a high level of the population with good literacy and numeracy skills. If we move on to the literacy slide, there we go. You see the same kind of slide again. And in fact, there's not a lot to change in the position between numeracy and literacy. So that means that those who are doing good in the numeracy also tend to be good in the literacy and vice versa. And if I talk about literacy for a moment, what the study also indicates for the first time, they're able to make the comparison between the population's literacy performance with their trust in society, with their belief in the political system and personal engagement in politics, with their willingness to volunteer in their communities, and with their own perceptions of health. And the higher the literacy skills and numeracy skills, the higher they rate their own health. And just another quick look, if the others didn't convince you, if you take a look at the highest levels of numeracy skills, so levels 4 and 5, versus GDP per capita, what you see is that there is no chance that you're going to have a high GDP if you have low numeracy skills, or let's say if you have high numeracy skills, you're not going to fall into the low GDP category. So I think when you talk to other policymakers who don't understand STEM and who are not from an education background, this is a way sometimes to talk economics and numbers and society in a way that they can more easily understand.
Yes, and you also mentioned before that there is a general shortage of STEM workers. We put together just a few European countries and some of the figures that they mention in terms of the lack of qualified future staff. And as you can see, Germany, shortage of 200,000 STEM graduates, 25,000 in the Netherlands, 40,000 in France, Switzerland, smaller country, but still 16,000 jobs. And also we have a generation problem in also my country here, that we have a lot of people closing in on retirement, and who is going to replace them. And of course you can also try to put costs on this. So 20 billion per year for Germany, 2 billion per year for Switzerland. And this is just to put into perspective, then when we talk about that education may be expensive, think about how expensive it is not to do something. So that is another number perspective in order to convince that this really is important.
How is that cost estimated? I'm sorry. How do you estimate those 20 billion?
Well,
does it represent really?
Yes. I don't know how that calculation is made.
Those were studies that were done by the individual countries, and I think they calculated more on economic loss. So what they would have been able to gain in revenues if they had
The
necessary people in order to grow, because it's actually a growth limiter in those countries.
Yeah, it's not a status quo, it's a growth, of course. And I was very happy to hear the Deputy Director before talking about relevance, comprehensive education, and so on, because if you ask a young person like this, maybe 12 years old, why should you learn language? Yes, it's of course I need to read and write. This is important. Why should you learn math? Yes, it's important to not to be cheated when I go to the shop. And why should I have sports? It's important to keep fit. Why should you have physics, biology, chemistry, and things like that? And the answer would probably something like this: I don't know, because the teacher says I should. Or maybe if you want to become a physicist. But our goal here is not that everybody should become physicists. Our goal is that everybody should have high-level skills in these in the STEM field. Not that everybody should be high STEM experts, but at least this should be a very, very integral part of their education, because it is an integral part of society, and it is the way that the growth circles around these skills. So if you're completely ignorant in this way, it's very, very hard to be a 21st century citizen. And I don't think we are doing a good enough job in education to talk about relevance and to show this kid why is it important to learn physics. And this is where school industry collaborations come in. Within the Ingenious project, we have done a large survey. You can see there's more than 7,000 children participating here. And it's a little bit complicated, this graph, but I will try to explain it. So you ask, would you like to get a job related to science and technology? And then you also ask, have you learned something about different career choices available in industry? And for the boys, or for the children who agree they would like to get a job related, it's 46% if they have had not any information or any meeting with industry at all, but it goes up 20% to 66% just to know a little bit about different career choices. Do you get it? So just to talk about industry in relations to the curriculum in school, just to bring in examples, it will raise the motivation to get a job in these and pursue a career and study within these fields by 20%. And I think this is a very, very interesting figure. We need to get the real life into the classroom, or maybe, as was said before, have the real world as a classroom. Okay. We also asked around in different countries as part of the Ingenious project, what do you think would help to promote STEM and to help school industry collaborations? And in Germany, they say it would be beneficial if different networks could work together. In Spain, they say increasing awareness among all agents, like the ones who are in this room, about the importance of education that promotes STEM. UK say one place, a portal website that showcases and lists ways that schools can engage with industry. Finland, the need of cooperation between different stakeholders. Austria, a national STEM information platform, and so on and so on and so on. It seems that everybody, no matter where we ask, seems to be very interested in coordination and exchange of best practices. And this is why we started thinking very, very much about national platforms. And Kim, you will say a few words what we think is a national platform.
Yeah, exactly. So as you know, we all kind of met each other working in the Ingenious project. And what we discovered working together inside of the Ingenious is that there was something to be learned from each other about best practices, what works in the long term. How do you go from countries, and you see all of those countries listed, they have great individual practices, they have great initiatives, just like you have in Portugal. The problem is how do you coordinate those? How do you distribute the resources across a large geographical zone? How do you make them sustainable? If teachers move, if industry partners change, how do you manage to keep the momentum going? And what we discovered is where it really works the best is where there's a national platform. It can be a light organization, it can be adapted to each, but that helps make that continuity, where people have common goals and they work towards a sustainable process. The other thing that we discovered that really works well is that policymakers, excuse me for saying this, but I've spent 2.5 years now sort of in Brussels. Policymakers are not a whole lot different than sometimes they are in industry, where each little tower kind of remains by itself. And the only way you can really create momentum is when you make the powers and the towers work together. And what we've seen that works well is when you can get the ministries to talk to each other, where they start to talk about what do we need to have as national goals, what's appropriate for us, what's appropriate for our economies in the long term. When you hear this morning it's about transitions, it's about helping people to have employment security, not job security, because they're going to change jobs 10, 15 times in their careers, but how do they have employment security? It's about making sure that we have a good exchange of practices that's within a country, that's outside of the country, and that we make a good use of the resources that we have available.
So this is why we made the National Platforms Task Force, to promote the idea of national platforms by example. And we will stop talking in just 2 minutes and we will get to the real stuff. So our method is to travel around. We were in Estonia 1 month ago and have a meeting very, very much like this one, very much the same people in the room, representatives from ministries, from industry, from schools, from informal learning sector, and from universities and so on. And our goal is to promote knowledge transfer. Not to say that there's one model that works, but to inspire. So the process of our national platform task work is to kickstart a dialogue. This is a kickstart meeting where we hope to get a lot of dialogue today. And this afternoon we will work the details with the team, how to go on. And then we invite representatives from Portugal to visit Netherlands in the winter, and we will try to organize it so a delegation from Estonia will come to Netherlands at the same time, so we can go much more into detail and have meetings on different levels about how can you make a national platform. We will do a follow-up process, and we will work on this until next summer to run this process in close dialogue with Portugal and Estonia. So you are our test pilots. And what we really hope that if this turns out to be valuable and inspirational for you, that we can go on to do this work and maybe promote national platforms to more countries around Europe and make a European network of people who work with national platforms in order to have as good quality as possible. But as I say, we will stop talking now and give the floor to first Sebastian and then Nana. And Sebastian will tell us about what they have done in the Netherlands in the last 10 years. And Nana will talk about what we are just starting to do in Denmark. So thank you very much, and I give the floor to you, Sebastian.